I've always liked the sound of a heavy car door closing, that solid mechanical thud. It's a sound that says, you're safe now. The world outside can be screaming, but once that seal is tight, it's just you and the smell of leather. Last Tuesday, it was raining, the kind of rain that turns everything into a gray, blurry mess. I was sitting in my car in a near-empty parking lot, just letting the engine idle. The heater was humming, and the rhythmic heartbeat of the car felt like it was keeping the storm at bay. We don't really lock doors to keep people out, do we? Not really. We lock them to give ourselves permission to feel like we're in control. And here, in this small German-engineered box, I was the god of my own little world, safe, untouchable. Or so I thought. The engine's heartbeat was steady until it wasn't. It was interrupted by a sound so sharp, so intentional, it made the hair on my neck stand up. A tap, then a double tap, right against the driver's side glass. Just a small sound, but it felt like a needle pricking the surface of my perfect private reality. I looked over, expecting a late-night traveler or maybe a security guard. Instead, there were two children. They couldn't have been more than 10 and 12. They were standing there in the absolute deluge, but something was wrong. They weren't shivering. They weren't even blinking as the water poured over their faces. They wore these heavy, dark wool coats, the kind you only see in old, grainy funeral photographs from the 40s. They looked like they had been cut out of a different era and pasted into my parking lot. The older one leaned in. His voice didn't sound like a child's. It was flat, monotone. It had the cadence of someone reading from a script they didn't quite understand. "Our father is coming," he said. "But we have lost our warmth. May we sit in the back until he arrives?" The car's heater, which had been blowing comfortably hot, suddenly started to emit a scent of wet iron and ozone, like the air right before a lightning strike. I stared at the boy's mouth as he spoke. It was like watching a dubbed movie where the audio is just a fraction of a second off. He placed a palm against my window. The glass was freezing, but there was no fog from his breath. No heat, just a pale, bloodless hand pressed against the barrier between us. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to drive away, but my body wasn't listening. My hand started to twitch toward the unlock button. It wasn't a choice. It felt like a magnetic pull, like my fingers were being dragged by an invisible wire. The nausea hit me next, a sudden, violent wave that made my vision swim. And then the children started to change their tactic. They didn't yell, they didn't bang on the glass, they started to hum. It was a low-frequency vibration that I felt in my teeth more than I heard in my ears. Amidst that hum, the younger one started speaking. He wasn't asking to come in anymore. He was reciting something. 14028 Oakcrest Drive, he whispered. That was my childhood home, a house 3 states away that had been torn down 10 years ago. Then he said my mother's maiden name, then the name of my first dog. They were reading my history out loud, using it as a key to try and turn the lock in my mind. I realized then that the door wasn't the real barrier. The lock was only as strong as my own will to stay impolite. My hand was an inch from the button. The ringing in my ears became a deafening roar, drowning out the rain, replaced by the wet sound of a blinking eye right against the glass. I forced my lungs to work and managed to gasp out a single word. No. For a split second, the older child's face rippled. It didn't move like skin. It flickered like a corrupted video feed, revealing something gray and featureless underneath before snapping back into the shape of a boy. The rejection didn't make them leave. It made them lean in closer. The older boy pressed his face so hard against the window that his nose should have flattened, but it didn't. He just stared. And that's when I finally looked. Really looked into his eyes. They weren't just dark, they weren't black in the way we usually describe eyes, they were matte. There were no pupils, no irises, no white. Just 2 perfectly circular holes punched into the fabric of reality. They didn't reflect the dashboard lights. They didn't glint from the street lamps. They seemed to actually absorb the light around them, eating the glow of the car. I felt a voice, not in my ears, but inside the center of my skull. And it wasn't a child's voice anymore. It was ancient. It was hungry. "We have been waiting for the invitation since you were born," it said. The interior lights of my car flickered and turned a bruised, sickly yellow. I looked down at the digital clock on the dash. The numbers were spinning, counting backward at an impossible speed. The air in the car turned so cold I could see my own breath, a frantic white mist in the dim yellow light. Those 2 voids were all I could see. Two pits of nothingness that promised that if I just pressed that button, I would never have to be cold again, because I would never have to feel anything again. I didn't think. I just slammed the car into drive and floored it. I didn't even look back until I was miles away. When I finally dared to glance at the rearview mirror, they were still there, standing in the middle of the empty lot, perfectly still, watching me go. I'm home now. I've checked the 3 deadbolts on my front door 5 times. I've closed every curtain. But here's the thing about the rule of permission. I used to think it meant you had to say yes. I used to think a lock was enough. But as I sit here in the dark, I realize that by looking into those matte voids, I gave them a different kind of invitation, a visual one. And that's a door you can't ever truly close. I can still feel that low-frequency hum in my jaw. I just noticed something. My car keys, sitting on the counter. They're hot, not room temperature warm. They're burning to the touch. And just a moment ago, I heard it. A single heavy, wet footstep, not outside, on the carpeted stairs just past my bedroom door. Check the safety locks on your car tonight, if they feel a little warmer than they should. Don't look up, and whatever you do, don't look at the gaps under your doors.